come for the thrills, telling truths and hope you won't find any black pills. Right beneath the surface, pull back the propaganda veil, find truth, freedom, and justice. It's red, right, and real. And red, right, and real.
Here we are, red, right, and real. I am Bella.
I'm AK Kamara.
Welcome to this show tonight. I'm going to start with a little bit of an open, and then we're going to get right into, I think it was really brilliant how Christy, oh, that's right. I'm supposed to look into the camera. Look
That's right.
deep into the camera. I don't know.
Want to see your beautiful face.
Oh, whatever. I'm going to try. It's going to take me because I am so used to, I've been doing this for such a long time, and I'm so used to just looking straight on. But, you know, I think it's brilliant that Christy figured out how to get same-day delivery and as prompt as he has by utilizing our airways with the drones to get his Mickey D delivered at the click of a finger. So that's going to be their first topic is these mysterious drones, or are they mysterious, or is it really the government knows exactly what the hell is going on and they're just not telling us? So I was driving around today and I was trying to really think about what I wanted to open with. And the thing that kept sticking in my mind was, and AK, I'm going to try and keep this to under a couple of minutes, not hog up 20 minutes of the show, but truth kept coming to mind. What lesson have we learned as a country? Have we finally learned and understood we can't say our vote doesn't count? We can't say, I'm going to put the guy, the most likable individual, into the most important position in the free world. This is America, and we are seen as the leader of the world in many aspects. And when I think about truth and the lessons that we learned, I also think about how long did we sit and listen for years and years and years that the society were sheeple, that people really didn't know, understood. I keep seeing on Facebook, we got to wake up. We got to understand we are awake. Otherwise, we wouldn't have voted, in such masses in November. But what created that mass awakening? What affected every single one of us, whether or not we wanted it to, whether or not we got feared by it, whether it terrorized us to the point that we double, triple masked up. We didn't leave our bedroom. We didn't answer. We didn't open windows. My own dear sweet mother, she journaled in her planner in the very beginning of the terrifying concerns that she had until I started hanging out with her and tampering those fears. So I like to find the good in bad and the beauty in the mess, as I like to say. COVID was one of the most, we will never know the truth and how exactly all it was executed internationally. There's many things that we won't know. What I will say, COVID taught us to demand and seek truth. We learned, whether it initially or we're just now, some of you are just now figuring out what COVID really was, which it was a strained virus leaked from a lab, and then it was politically weaponized. And instead of utilizing true medical science to protect the elderly and those vulnerable, it was weaponized to terrorize all of us, destroy. And I don't need to go down the list of what COVID did. We know in so many different levels. But when you look at what happened then, when Biden got into office, from day one and throughout, and then even how it was handled when they decided to replace him with Kamala Harris, with absolutely no process from the voters. And then it was just lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. the border is secure, the economy is good. You know, you just dismissing us as if we were just small little stupid people. Kamala pointed out that we were really, really stupid. She mentioned it multiple times. So where I'm going with all of this is I was listening to Trump's presser earlier today, and I just thought this is why the election result was so overwhelming, is because you cannot take 4 years of Donald J. Trump juxtaposed with the most epic failure of a president in mental decline and replace with, I'm not even going to use the SALAD that they always, I mean, we know it. I mean, she was the most inept, and I just heard a polling number, AK, that when they're looking for the 2028 election, she is like top of mind for the Democrat Party for the election. But so my kickoff is why now, as we segue into the drones, and it just is one thing after the next that the government is proving that this is the most epic failure administration in place. That is why Donald J. Trump is literally running around as commander-in-chief in real time. Thank God, because Biden, I don't know if he can formulate words anymore. They're certainly not easing anybody's concerns about what's really going on. I had a conversation earlier today at one of my sales stops about belief that the government is behind it. But the real fact is the American public is awake and aware. We are demanding truth, leadership, and we are looking forward to Donald J. Trump coming back into office and taking control of this country. So you and I met last night. We were talking about this drone situation, and I'll give it to you on some thoughts.
Yeah, so let's kind of start it off this way. Make sure that you guys hit the like button on whatever platform you're watching this. Today we tried doing kind of like a multicast to also X. We're seeing kind of how all of this works out. So if you're watching this on either X, YouTube, or on Facebook, make sure you hit the like and hit the share button. If you share it, then other people are going to see it. Bella, I will say that you did better on your opening monologue. Maybe need to cut about 3-ish minutes off of it, but still pretty good. But you brought up some really important points, right? So it's like understanding that the way that our country right now is kind of organized is that there are people that clearly understand like actual facts. And then there's a group of people that don't understand facts. And instead they're in some type of like delusional world. And in this analysis where they're just completely deluded, they think things like, you know, whatever the media says about Trump, they're like, oh yeah, this must be what the truth is. And, you know, this is, I think, when you really try and give our best analysis, there are two different viewpoints that Americans have. And we on the right, and we'll even say like the right using air quotes, we know that there's objective truth and reality, right? It's not subjective. It's like, here is a thing that happens. Here's a thing that occurs. And they've painted that Donald Trump and those of us on the right, that, you know, we are all evil or we're fascists or whatever. But there still is, thankfully, thank God, we were able to break through the narrative. And there's more people on our side than are on the side of whatever this fake, false reality is, which plays into what I love about our president is, you know, things like what he tweeted out about the drones. So on your screen, you can see that, you know, our great president, you know, had some fun. And obviously he used some type of AI generator to say, here's what's really going on in New Jersey, right? The drones are out there delivering McDonald's to Chris Christie.
This is actually more believable than probably, I don't know. I don't know if we're ever going to get to, my question is, we have the ability to shoot one of these down. And that's why it leads back to, is it our actual government? But you have some theories on this that you wanted to share tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, one of, I guess, the big kind of talking points is like, what are these drones? So I made a video on my TikTok. You can follow me there at AK Kamara. And I showed some news stories that the first drone was actually reported back on the 18th of November, that there were residents in New Jersey that were like, hey, what's going on with these drones, right? And basically up until even today, there's not a definitive answer. Now, during President Trump's, he had a presser today for like an hour and a half, which Kamala could never, Biden could never. He said for sure the government knows what's going on. And it's because if you listen to like John Kirby, you know, he's a Secretary of Defense, or not Secretary of Defense. What is John Kirby? Whatever. Someone will probably correct me in the chat. But John Kirby had a press conference last week on either Thursday or Friday, and he said that, you know, there's nothing to be worried about. There's no national security risk. Well, how could he make that definitive statement if, unless he actually knows what it is? So I guess the two options are he's lying and he doesn't want panic to set in, or the United States government knows what it is. So then with Trump saying today that he knows that the government has to know what it is, it brings up this interesting theory that's kind of out there right now in the ether. And that theory is that these are some type of, they're government drones, but they are trying to either test a technology that can pick up on basically radioactive nuclear signatures, because we have this kind of other story that's been breaking in the last couple of weeks, that the podcaster Sean Ryan actually broke open on his podcast, which we're going to play a clip from that. But that there's potentially 1,000+ terrorists that are somewhere in the United States, and the FBI has caught 0 of them. So when you kind of couple these things together, what if, with our failed withdrawal in Afghanistan, with Iran doing what they've been doing, with Syria falling, right, all of these different kind of pieces, what if there's intelligence reports that there's some type of dirty bomb on the loose in the East Coast, in the New York, New Jersey area? And what if these drones are employing a technology that's looking, and it would make sense. And again, I'm not saying that this is what's going on. I understand that there's a lot of like false IDing, like people seeing literal airplanes and they think that they're like a drone, but it's just an airplane and it's just their spatial distance. They think it's something else. But what if these drones are government drones and they are actually either testing or actively searching for radioactive signatures? And that's why the government can't come out and actually confirm it, because it would probably set a lot of people into panic. People would start fleeing from New York City, from New Jersey. So that's kind of what I think. Like, that theory to me makes the most sense. So of the theories that you've heard, you know, which one makes the most sense to you, Bella?
Well, I got to ask you something though.
Yeah.
Who would be directing this? Because our government has been in complete, our administration, the current administration, not ours, the current administration has been in complete denial about the border being wide open, about the types of people crossing over the border. So who would actually, you know, then this is opinion based and we're kind of like thinking out loud, but who would actually be directing this? Because they're in complete denial that the border's even open. So
yeah, so like, I guess my viewpoint would be that it's like the federal government, right? The FBI is probably the likely
Christopher Wray, who's stepping down.
Right. Christopher Wray, but also it could be a joint task force, you know, Department of Homeland Security, you know, Mayorkas. They also have, you know, a hand in that as well. So that's kind of the way that I look at it, is that it could be any one of these, you know, if you want to say, it could be any one of these scenarios. I just don't think that it's nothing, though. I mean,
I don't think that it's nothing. And I think this is where we can say, and as the audience gets to know us better, AK, you put it perfectly last night when you said the two of us couldn't be any more different from our backgrounds. And so I'm always the one very, very suspicious of our government and our administration. So when Christopher Wray is stepping down as Trump is coming in, the FBI has been epic failure as well in anything that they have tried to investigate. So I would be really curious who would actually be behind it, that would actually be trying to patrol our skies for us for the good of the people from the government.
Yeah. So if people also remember last week, New Jersey Congressman Jeff Van Drew, who used to be a Democrat and then basically, like, I want to say like 3 or 4 months, it might have been longer, he switched parties, right? He came out and said, I support Donald Trump. And he switched from being a Democrat and becoming a Republican. Well, he went on Fox News and he said, not only do we know what it is, and then he broke news and said, this is a mothership that's off basically the United States coast. And in the mothership, like some people are thinking he meant like when he said mothership, that he was talking about like a physical ship, like in the water. No, what he was saying is that like and literal like drone mothership was deploying these smaller drones, and that this was actually owned by Iran. So he came out and said that last week, and then the press secretary for the Pentagon came out and said that's not what our intel is. And so this is why, like, you put all these pieces together. Maybe Iran did have some drones, and maybe again we have our own drones, and it's just like I have no idea what's going on. But the one thing that I can tell you for sure is that I believe that when President Trump is sworn in, this stuff is going to stop, or they'll be honest with the American people. Like, that's the one thing that I've always admired most about President Trump, is he says what he actually thinks. Like, he will give you, even if he's like, he doesn't know for sure, he'll be like, here's what I've heard, or this is what I've read. And so I don't think that President Trump would keep something like that from us.
No.
I think that there's a level of people saying like, oh, well, you know, what if it makes people like freak out or panic? But again, when it came to COVID, President Trump, he said it how it was, right? He even if he might have been wrong or whatever about certain aspects, he at least said it how it was. And I think that having that will be a breath of fresh air. Now, I want to go through this one story with Fox News. So it's a New Jersey pilot who lost control of their drone when they were flying. Like, something, it was like a kill switch was hit that dropped it. And so it's kind of an interesting story. But again, it just kind of leads to believe that there must be some American government involvement if they're able to shut down drones mid-flight and send them crashing to the ground. So yeah, it says right here, New Jersey drone pilot says his device lost power and was forced to descend from a restricted chunk of airspace while the mystery flyer was trying to investigate, managed to stay airborne despite a signal designed to shut down the legal drone. And then this is this guy that kind of went through to explain. But yeah, to me, if there's an active type of disengagement system that the U.S. government is employing, it's because they probably don't want other drones messing with their drones that are searching for whatever the heck they're searching for. So I just think that for me, that's what the drones are. Is it funny to suggest that they're aliens? Sure. Like, it could be that, right? Like, let me ask you, Bella, what have you heard, or have you heard anything about something called Project Bluebeam?
I haven't. That isn't where they were showing us the mummified aliens that literally looked like ET like several months ago, and I don't even know where the hell that came from. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. I mean, it could have been part of it, but so Project Bluebeam basically is this idea that the government is going to stage a mass hoax, pretending to have an alien invasion. And the reason they're
wait a minute, that already happened when they inserted Kamala Harris.
True, that's fair. That is fair. But the reason I said like the shriveled whatever could have been that is because the idea is that this is how the government basically will stage a mass like alien invasion across the whole country. Like, think like Independence Day level, but it's all going to be fake. But they're going to use it to consolidate global power, and it also like coincides with like Armageddon / Revelation.
Oh, so this is when all the Q people get to come forward and say, I was right, and the country is going to be taken over and martial law, and then they're going to reinsert Trump before Inauguration Day. And the White House is empty, and the White House is out on the studio in Hollywood. It's actually produced like a movie. I'd like to get some of those people on our show at some point and say, where did you get all of this anyways? But so you're saying that Hey, I've heard it all.
Hey, listen,
All.
Bella, you've been in the thick of it since, like, again, for those that haven't watched the show before, Bella initially in 2009 was on, she called in to Sean Hannity, and she told Sean Hannity that she thought that Donald J. Trump should run for president in 2009. So
Yep.
Bella has been online, connected with people talking about Donald J. Trump being the president of the United States since then. So yes, I imagine that in the thick of Q, you probably were getting inundated with Q drops, right? They were
Hey,
sending you
wait.
numbers.
I mean, this is you're looking at a girl that literally listened for. I should have counted the days, but how many days did I sit and listen while scrubbing toilets in Williston, North Dakota? That there was nothing stopping Hildebeest whatsoever. I heard about the end of times literally every single day. Then there was the Mayan calendar that was supposed to do us in. And poor little Eric Olson saw me, the most frazzled little human being, saying that I didn't want to die single in an apartment in Williston, North Dakota because of the Mayan calendar. I mean, the thing is, but we've all, that's where it leads back to the truth.
Yeah.
We've all been hearing through all these years of the fact that there was no fighting the great establishment. There was no draining the swamp. We were never going to see the American dream and spirit. I remember saying thousands of times how we had to take this country back. And I had guys look at me out in North Dakota and say, take what back? Like there was no belief in this country anymore. And those of you listening, I know that you're nodding your head when you're saying, but you saw something that started this Trump train way before Trump even announced that he was going to run for president. There were things that we were watching for a very long time in this country that started to build that silent majority, those that never voted. How about those 17-year-olds, my little heroes at McDonald's that make my ice cream cone extra big without charging me and give me extra ice in my Diet Coke? And even though they weren't old enough to vote, you know who they all said that they were going to vote for? Donald J. Trump. And when you ask them why, because they said, I know that I can have a future now. And so all of these things built to the fact that we're not going to tolerate their BS anymore. We're not going to listen to it. And that's why we only have so many more days before he gets in. We are actually 30 some, counting 40, 34 days before he is inaugurated. And he will finally, fundamentally turn this country around in the direction that it needs to go. And I do not see any hope for the Democrats anytime soon to get back into a position of power. Anything more you want to cover on the drone? I can't wait till we get the truth out, which eventually it will come.
Yeah. So for me, like, again, when we're talking about the drones, who knows what it's going to be? I personally don't think that, I don't think alien invasion, like I said, it's funny to joke about. I think it's the United States government. And I think that the reason why the government's doing it in the first place is simply because there's some type of threat that's happening. Now, there's one little interesting caveat is Alex Jones last night, which this is hilarious in and of itself. When Alex Jones is the voice of reason, your conspiracies probably have no merit because Alex Jones, I think the greatest thing that he's able to do is he reads the news, but what he'll do is he'll take a truth and then he'll stretch it to like this extreme. Okay. Like, it's like there could be a possibility of this thing happening, and then Alex Jones will stretch it. But what Alex Jones did is his team did research, and they found out that there was actually this facility, multiple facilities built in New Jersey that have been doing like drone testing that's like government based for a while. And so Alex Jones basically went on stream last night, and he said, we know what they are. It's this testing facility. Now, I don't know if that's 100% true, but I think that the idea that it's either a foreign country or, aliens or transdimensional demons, I don't think that that's the case. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I think that the only way that we're actually going to find out the truth is, President Trump has to be sworn in. Once that happens, then I think we're going to be, we'll know the truth. And it's probably, like I said, it's either a training exercise or they actually are looking for, actual like bad guys, and I want to use that to kind of go into this next story, which again, we won't spend a ton of time on it, but I think it's interesting to understand that back at the beginning of the show, I said there's kind of like two realities that exist. There's objective reality where it's like, here's the truth of things. And then there's this like fake made up reality that we'll say is kind of like created and crafted by the government / uniparty / deep state / Democrat apparatus. But within that framework, it's like, what is the truth? And sometimes it's hard to hear difficult things. So this is Sean Ryan. He is a former special operator, and he has one of like the top podcasts in the world. And so basically on his show, he interviewed this gal, Sarah Adams, and I just want to play the clip. And so just let me know if you can hear the audio, because we had this problem before, but we'll see if it works here.
The episode tomorrow with Sarah Adams. Lots and lots of info coming out of there. Look, here's one of the main points. There are at least 1,000 terrorists within our borders right now. Al-Qaeda, Taliban, ISIS, all of them. You know how many the FBI's caught? 0. 0 terrorists. You want more on this? You can sign up for the newsletter. Sarah writes an intelligence report every week. Comes out on Monday. You can hit the link down there, SeanRyanShow.com.
So that's where I kind of take that information, I combine it with these reports that basically, I mean,
I don't know. I'll be my own conspiracy theorist.
Yeah,
okay,
tell me what you think.
Well, it just came to me now, and I'm sure this is way off of the reality radar, but we all know how incredibly smart Trump is. Yep. And when you look at the people that are around him, the cabinet members that he's appointed, I mean, how do we not know that and I know that he's saying, this is the government, but he also sets things up to prove who is truly inept. I don't know, maybe Elon and Trump got a special forces unit going on of drones, and they're all over the terrorists in this country, because who brought to light the absolute, what's going on at that border is beyond anything that we've seen in any other country. It's one of the biggest reasons that got him elected. All of those horrific deaths, and they were unnecessary deaths, but I don't know. There's something bigger going on, and we will get to the bottom of it. And it's not shocking to me of how many terrorists are in this country. I think all the time, I hope it's not true. I hope it's not a matter of not if, but when. But that's why I can sleep better at night knowing who's coming into office and taking control of this country. Where do we want to segue next?
Yeah, so I just kind of want to finish up that when we're talking about, again, truth, being objective, like this is a failure of the current administration, right? The idea that there are, like, again, if we believe that the Sarah Adams and her intelligence report, which, by the way, she's a former CIA operative, is accurate, and there's been some congressional testimony that happened in the last basically like 3 weeks where this question kept on being brought up of like, how many terrorists is the Department of Homeland Security aware of, or have intel that we have terrorists on American soil that are like basically off in the wind, and that number was like, the question was unanswered. So again, that's the objective reality, and thank God that President Trump was able to win despite all odds, because this is going to be something that is going to have to be faced, because this is like a ticking time bomb scenario, right? Like, terrorists just don't come into the United States to, play tiddlywinks. They come to the United States because they want to cause us harm, death, and destruction, because they completely disagree with our way of life. Now, talking about people and things and organizations that completely disagree with our way of life, have you heard at all about this Satanist display that's now at the Minnesota State Capitol?
I just caught it on at Facebook, actually. I think that was Jake Duesenberg that actually put it up. I saw the posting several days ago and didn't know what to think of it. I'm not a conspiracy. I'm not someone to jump on board until I know more about. That's why I'm kind of until I know more about and we can dig deeper into the drones. I wanted to talk about it tonight, but we've really got to get some information and some facts so that we can really dig into it. And we will as we get further along. This right here, I didn't even know that there is Minnesota Satanists. Thanks to all the hard work from our congregation, especially Calcifer, for helping us set up Minnesota Satanists' first ever holiday display at the state capitol in St. Paul. So, that it's really there, right, AK?
Yeah, it's literally there. They are using the basically the religious exemption, right? Like if you apply at the state capitol to put up a religious display, it's allowed, right? So like as long as it's an outside organization. So like legislators can't ask for a display, but other groups can. So let's say that there's a nativity scene, for instance, that gets applied for, and they want to have, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph and the three wise men or whatever, and have a nativity scene. It can't be the actual government that puts it up, but an outside organization can ask. And apparently the Satanists of Minnesota applied and this was approved, and they have this garbage, demonic, evil nonsense on display in the people's capital. And the thing is this, like, this might be a little bit of a wake-up call for people. Like this has been happening across the country. Last year, if you remember, famously, there was a Republican legislator in Iowa that, like, I think attacked the display. And I don't know if he took a sword. Like, I think he took some type of something and he knocked the head off of this, like, again, the Satanist display. Maybe I'm imagining it in my mind that he had like a flaming sword. Not really, but that he knocked the head off. So he destroyed the display. And I believe it was a state legislator. See, now I could be getting all the details wrong, but he went and destroyed the display in Iowa, which, again, Iowa is a very conservative state. If you remember, President Trump just won Iowa by like whatever, like 8 percentage points or 10 percentage points. It could have been more than that. So it's a deep red area. It's a deep red state, but they had a Satanist display. But again, people kind of like out of sight, out of mind. But now with this display happening in Minnesota, the feedback is this is terrible. And I know they're trying to make it look cutesy. That's like, if I'm going to click on one of these photos here and see if I can get it.
Well, I'm glad you brought this. I was trying to figure out how I was going to segue into our fearless leader, Tampon Timmy. Rush Limbaugh was always way ahead of his time. And I remember when so much of the George Floyd stuff was, they're burning the city down in the precinct, and Timmy's running around calling the National Guard the burger flippers and the kids and all the insanity. That was just the tip of the iceberg of this fool. And I talked about this last night about hoping that Minnesota has finally woken up to who this guy is in the next run for governor. I know a certain individual that I would love for him to run again, hint. But when
he might have been on, I think, our second episode.
Yes, he was. But now you got to ask yourself, where in the world, where are these? It needs to be exposed. One of the other key reasons that Donald Trump was elected, and the fact that we want truth, not only truth and leader, but we want God brought back into this country, and we want common sense and our schools turned around. We want everything. You know what? This country got so spun outside of what the country was really all about, and what it was focused on. There was more energy in getting men into women's locker rooms and having poor girls stare at naked men in women's bathing suits than there was securing our border and making sure that we could afford food and taking care of our children and having, I mean, just the common sense things. So when you see something like this, I mean, I just saw it on Facebook. AK, I know that since you brought this to the table, you've got more to share about it. I'm glad you brought this in tonight because this is very disturbing.
Yeah. So listen, there's an argument that I think is a fair argument to have, that you have freedom of religion. Okay. I understand the argument, but let me ask you, do you believe that Satanism is an actual religion? And that's the question that I think people need to ask, because I don't think it actually is. If you kind of dive deep into the current iteration of Satanism, it's actually just a bunch of atheists that are spitting in the eye and throwing the middle finger at Christians. They're mocking Christianity. These, for the most part, aren't people that actually believe that Satan is this, fallen demonic person who's actually like a good person or whatever. So that's like the current iteration. I will say that there definitely are people that worship Satan. That's different, but I don't think any fair society would actually ever accept a literal death religion that says like, go kill yourself, because that's what like Satanism is. Like actual Satanists that follow the ideology are like, they're obsessed with death. So I would actually argue that even if these were actual Satanists that prayed or whatever, made sacrifice and oaths and whatever to actual Satan, they probably shouldn't be allowed in a civil society, in one that's like, I think like ours, to be able to have these displays. I'm not saying that if you want to worship Satan that you can't. I just don't think it's a real religion. And these people, I think, are using it again to mock and deride Christians. So then the question is, should they be allowed to put this up? Now, let's say that I created a group that was overtly anti-LGBTQ, and I said that this was my religion, and I wanted to put up a display in the middle of the Minnesota State Capitol that had photos and pictures disparaging LGBTQ people, causing them harm. Would that be allowed if I put up the banner that it was my religion? What do you think, Bella?
No, and I mean, this is beyond this isn't I want to pull up Jake's point on this. Jake Duesenberg, who is Action for Liberty, and I think Jake, I had this show in studio back in 2022, but Jake was the one that put this up that caught my eye, and so his comments are: these guys aren't Satan worshipers. They are anti-Christian jokesters that would love nothing more than for us to go to the courts to remove religious symbolism from the public square. I hope they one day find the Lord. I mean, this is extremism, and this is kind of like when the progressive liberal women ran around with the hats on their head and screaming at their body parts and just trying to do things to be kind of shock and awe and trying to see how far they can push the envelope. And this needs to be shut down. But what needs to be brought to attention is really what you and I had talked about, is the Republican Party within Minnesota. And, when can Minnesota itself start to actually win and find some true leadership within the state itself?
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue. So this is what's so fascinating about, I think, this show, and why I like to do the show with you, is like, I'm, for lack of a better term, like I'm an entrenched party establishment person. Okay. I'm literally the Republican National Committee man for the state of Minnesota. I have a seat at the state executive committee for the Republican Party of Minnesota. And so from that, like, again, if we're just using actual words and language to describe a thing, that's what I am. You, however, are someone that I would argue is probably even more passionate about someone like President Donald Trump than and I love
Oh
Donald
yeah,
Trump.
you were an anti-Trumper. You were showing me your
Well,
your
plus I know that, but I'm saying beyond, I had a come to Donald Trump moment, and I'm now I've been a Trump supporter since 2018, going into 2019. But I'm saying even beyond that, though, even though I'm a party official that clearly supports President Trump, I've made hundreds of videos, probably talking like literal, like hundreds of videos talking about President Trump, and posting everything like that. And I worked to help him. I would argue that you probably like Trump even more than me. And the reason that's important is because I'm a party official and you aren't. And so this is like this very interesting kind of thing to kind of just, I just want to lay out. So over this past weekend on Saturday, we had this election. And during this election, the Republican Party of Minnesota decided to put up for vote. We do this every 2 years, but decided that we were going to have an election for new party leadership. So in the state of Minnesota, we technically have 3 statewide officers beyond myself, because I'm the national committee man and the national committee woman. We're elected, we're national representatives, and so we have a 4-year term. But I guess if you want to say like from like a technical aspect, we aren't statewide party officers. So the 3 statewide officers are chair, deputy chair, and secretary. And so to your point about leadership, that question was put to the body, and the body being the state central delegates, of who they wanted to have for chair. And they said that they no longer wanted the current chairman, who is David Hand. So he was voted out, and Alex Plekish is now going to be the new chair beginning January 1st. And so to the question that you have is, when are we going to see party leadership change? Well, we have a definite change. The deputy chair was reelected, Donna Bergstrom, and then the secretary, it was an open seat, and the new secretary is Joy Orvis. Now, I've had the pleasure of working with Donna Bergstrom since I've been national committee man. I've actually known Joy since about May or April, and Alex Plekish, this is a little whatever. I beat him for national committee man. So he was running for national committee man, and I challenged him and I won. So I know of him. I haven't had a chance to really talk to him a whole lot, but he is now the chairman, and I wish him the best of luck. Not just wishing him, but I'm going to help him succeed. I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing as national committee man. And the reason I was like, it's kind of weird because, like, can you imagine, Bella? You challenge someone, you beat them, you take their job, and then they come back 6 months later, and now they're kind of your boss. So that's what the current scenario is. Like, Alex Plekish isn't going to be my boss, but he is the chair, and I'm a national committee man. And while we kind of have like a co-equal vote in the RNC, in the state of Minnesota, he clearly is the chair. It is his party to command, and I am part of that system. So, but I do honestly wish him the best of luck. I'm going to help him succeed. And that's just, what I'm going to do, even though during the election, I might've supported David Hand at the kind of last minute. I threw my name out there to say I was supporting him. But my question to you is, Bella,
yes, sir.
A, do you care? That's number one. And B, what are your expectations when you see like something like this where there's a new chair?
Yes, I care. And let me back up a little bit. When it comes to our background, and I guess when I started figuring out what was really actually happening, which is in 2009, which is about the same time I got divorced in 2009. And so I had a lot of time on my hands, and I focused and I listened to various outlets. I listened to Dennis Miller, to Glenn Beck, to Sean Hannity, a lot of Fox News, Bill O'Reilly, Mark Levin. But a lot of what I came to understand was a lot of just organic common sense. I mean, I was watching people that couldn't retire. I was watching in the early 2000s, workplace signage being translated for different groups of people that had taken over our workforces, and it was affecting me personally because I couldn't get people to listen and understand. So I decided to take it another step and get my voice out there to hopefully get people listening, waking up, and understanding. Now, something that really shocked me when it comes to the state of Minnesota is, in the 2020 lockdowns, I was there driving around, honking our horns and harassing Tampon Timmy at his governor's mansion. I said to people that really it was almost egging him on because he was so enveloped with Scarf Lady and all the rest of them to just scare the living hell out of us, and his COVID pressers every single day, and his turn the dial and all his Mickey Mouse bullshit that went on. But what shocked me was when Jensen ran against him. I really was fully behind Jensen. I'd gotten to know Dr. Scott Jensen when he initially started to dispel the COVID numbers. He got involved when the notice went out to change all death certificates to COVID deaths. And so he launched an investigation, which in turn, the government launched an investigation to take his license away. But it gave me a lot of ammunition to turn around and explain to people what was happening in COVID. Now, we were talking about Minnesota politics. This is important. So it was several months ago, AK, that he came on the show, and I had a direct conversation with him. And I said, how is it that people didn't know and understand who Tim Walz is and was? Because he's governor of the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
When I bring up about the truth seeking that we have, we were all directly, indirectly, whether we wanted to or not, we lost loved ones. We lost life, liberty, pursuit of jobs, happiness. Many of us have lost family members, not by death, but lost family members because of this COVID that came out. It literally separated friends, family, did more damage that can be turned around. And Tim Walz was at the front of it. Then you find out there isn't anything honest, upstanding, or leadership about this individual that's in charge of Minnesota. My disturbing thing is, now, do I care about the chair? I don't know anything about these last two individuals. What I do care about is that the state of Minnesota wakes up so that we can get some real leadership, so that we can start to turn Minnesota back to the beautiful and prosperous state that we once were known for, instead of, as Rush Limbaugh coined us, the most radical lefty state in the U.S. And so I believe that since when Kamala picked him as VP, the national media had no allegiance to protect him. And so you, AK, you think that Minnesotans have a short-term memory. I disagree, but
yeah, let's talk about it. So the conventional wisdom in political science is that people in general have short-term memories when it comes to being able to quickly recall political things. Okay. And this can be evidenced by why there's an October surprise when someone sits on it for 6 months or longer, because if they were to release it 6 months before, people are going to kind of forget about it. And so in the same way, I think, because the conversation was, and we'll tie this into change in party leadership. Here's the question. Does Tim Walz dare run for governor for another term? And I know that the conventional wisdom might be he would never run.
This is where you and I do agree. He is delusional and so out of touch that he will run.
And so the question is, if he runs, is it a guaranteed loss for Democrats? And that's where you and I think, disagree on, is because I say maybe we have a lot of work to do. And that goes back to the political memory, is that people, by the time we get 2 years from now, are going to forget how bad Tim Walz was. And I think that if there is internal polling that Walz has that shows that he has a chance or a shot, I think he'll run. And I think that is as insane as it might sound to know that he just got nationally exposed and people found all the stuff. I still think that there is a lane that does exist where Tim Walz wins another term because people have such a short political memory. Now, to be fair, I think that having conversations, not just on our show, but on other shows, and being able to grow independent media in the state of Minnesota so we can remind people with short-term memories how terrible Tim Walz actually is, I think that I would relish and revel in the fact of Tim Walz running again, because we already have all the cuts, all of the sound bites. We just have to drown out the legacy media who's going to do nothing but run puff pieces about how great Tim Walz is. But yeah, I literally hope he runs, because I think he'd be the easiest candidate to beat, knowing what we know. And again, when we talk about leadership, I think that there's going to be a strategy, and I hope, and not just hope, because I keep saying hope because it's like, it makes it sound like I have no impact. I'm in the fight. Okay. I will say that in 26, if we get beaten badly in this state, you can look and point your finger directly at AK Kamara and say, you failed. Now, in this election in 24, I don't think you really can, because my term did not start until July 19th. And so at that point, how do you really have an impact on a campaign? There's so many other things that have to go, but now I'm, as part of this body of elected Republican Party officials, I will have a direct impact on shaping our strategy going into 2026. So if we lose and fail, you can point your finger at me. My term lasts until 28. So even if I lose and fail, maybe I'll resign in disgrace, or I'll tell you why it failed. But yeah, so that's kind of the way that I look at it, Bella, is like, our party leadership does matter, because when you actually want to implement a strategy to try and turn out voters and all of that does depend on who the party leadership is. And people are going to talk trash about David Hand, and people are going to call me a shill or a bootlicker or whatever. But I got to know David since I became national committee man, got to know a side of him that a lot of people probably don't get to know. And David's a good man. He's an honorable man. Did he always make the best choices? That I think in retrospect, absolutely not, which is evidenced by the fact that this body did not send him back for another 2 years. You have to deal with that reality. But I still think that Alex Plekish, I'm optimistic about what he's going to do for the party. But again, I'll say it back to you, Bella. Like, for you, is there ever like a desire or push for you to become more active in the actual party structure? I'm curious about that. And you and I've never even talked about this, but how interested are you in becoming actively involved in the Republican Party structure?
I think that after getting to know Eric Mortensen, Jake Duesenberg, Rick Weibel, a lot of the people that were pretty close to it, what I think needs to happen, I'll say this. Yes, I want to get more involved. What I would also like to see happen to Minnesota is what happened to the Republican Party nationally. Trump is a movement. Okay. It's a message that speaks that we want change. We want leadership. We want truth. We want someone that tells it as it is. We want someone with a backbone. Minnesota needs a backbone. We need a shakeup within our party. And that is why Minnesota has gone the direction that it has. And we need somebody that can really come in and stand their ground and say, we're going to fight to turn this state around. And I don't know what it's going to take to get that. I do believe that enough has come out about Walz, and you have given me a new mission, AK. So when I drive through McDonald's, instead of now, I can't ask them anymore about if they're going to vote. We all know because we won. I'm going to start asking, how much do you know about Tim Walz? And I'm going to bring raw, organic data from my travels, my man and woman in the street interviews, because I think that I will bring forth some pretty surprising information, as I did leading up to the election. When I told you we weren't doing the show on a regular basis, but I couldn't find anybody that was voting for Harris. I mean, whether they were the young elderly Democrat, Somalian. It was massive. And so I'm going to start bringing some information back about Tim Walz, because I think the tide has definitely turned, and there's enough out there that not only did the national media bring it out, but like I said, we all lived it and breathed it, and we still have the memories of what that governor did to our loved ones, our family, our careers. So we were impacted on every level. So anything else you'd like to add to that, so I don't?
Yeah. So the last thing to add is just kind of funny. So as a guy that's been involved in the Republican Party in Minnesota since 2006, it's not been constant at the same level. Like there's times in which I've been at the state level, like, higher levels. And then when I've been just literally down at the BPOU and really haven't done a whole lot more other than like volunteer to be a deputy sergeant at arms, which is basically like security for conventions. When you mention your political, I know you didn't say like teachers, but the three that you mentioned, Mortensen, Duesenberg, and Weibel, they're all very black pilled about the Republican Party. So I'm just going to say, don't let their black pillingness make you too disillusioned. I'll get you right. I'll get you squared, Bella. You say the word, and I'm going to get you turned into a grassroots / establishment machine. I'm going to get you turned into the system. But here's what I wanted to do next. This story broke last week, that something that you and I have talked, and it kind of plays into the bigger picture, but the Inspector General released their report that they'd been commissioned to try and do because of the House Republicans taking a majority. And that was to find out what happened on January 6th. Now, President Trump, he tweeted out, and he has now said in person that he plans on pardoning a bunch of J6ers. And then the media runs with the story, and they're like, he's going to pardon even the ones that like not objectively, but just like pure straight facts were like punching cops in the face. And that's not what Trump said. Trump said he's going to pardon J6ers. He didn't say all for any reason. Some people make an argument that maybe he should, but to that fact, this Inspector General report came out, and it shows that, guess what? More than 24, which is more than 24, informants were on the ground for the FBI on January 6th. Now, when you and I talked about this, we have a slightly different viewpoint of what that potentially looks like.
Because I'm correct.
But this report, it just basically goes through and it explains that, yes, when FBI Director Christopher Wray was being grilled, he said to his knowledge, the answer was no, because it was asked very straight, like, how many plainclothes FBI agents did you have in the field? And then secondly, how many informants? And he basically said like, oh, we didn't have anything there. I know I need.
I'm gonna just lay this out there, okay? Because my viewpoint is this: this was another staged, orchestrated event. Pelosi could have pulled out the guard and shut this thing down, but she didn't. Why? This was just another staged, orchestrated event to make Trump supporters look criminal, dangerous, murderers. Just one more staged event. I remember Larvita, I'm not going to try and slaughter her last name, a good friend, a colleague of mine, Larvita. She owned a restaurant down in southern Minnesota. She was shut down by Ellison and crew and Walz. She was there while Trump was giving his speech. And she called me later on that day that said that the minute that the doors were flung open by this orchestrated madness, they were still listening to Trump's speech. So that's my side of it. So it does not shock me that FBI was there on the ground, because this was all an inside job as well.
Yeah. So my position is not to say that it wasn't an inside job, because clearly it was. The question is, like, if we're trying to be nuanced, which I think nuance does matter, when you make a definitive statement, I think some people want to just jump on and be like, oh, this X is all true. It's usually not. It's usually a mixture. Was it a inside job from the fact that do I think that government entities understood that there was a potentiality that this thing could pop off if there were agitators mixed in? Yes, I believe that that is true. I think that this report, it doesn't prove it, but it definitely opens up the door wide open that if you have a bunch of FBI informants, is it possible that those informants were encouraged to try and inflame those that were on the ground? Yes. The other thing that I think is true, the nuance, is that the vast majority of people that have been arrested and charged weren't actually doing anything bad. Like, that is true. But the other part is that there is a small percentage of people that did do clearly overtly bad acts, whether they were again inflamed to or egged on to. There definitely were folks that were literally punching cops in the face and head and attacking cops. 100%. You cannot do that in a civil lawful society. You can't attack cops. You want to know where you go after cops? In the court of law.
Right, but that's part of the orchestrated part of it.
Right, but I'm saying there are people that are right now in jail that were fighting with cops, like 100%. So here's my thing. And people can disagree. The libertarians are going to disagree with me. They call me a bootlicker or whatever. Oh, you love the government boot.
Bootlicker.
Yeah, boot, like licking the boot of the government. People will say that because here's my thing. You're never going to win a fight with a cop. And if you do, you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life or for a very long time. So let's not fight with cops, even if they're in the wrong. Fight them in the court of law. I will say that to a person that gets pulled over that feels like the cops are roughing them up. I will say that to someone cops that throw you on the ground. Bring them to court. You're not going to win. And if you do, you're going to go to jail for a long time. And when you don't win, you're also going to go to jail for a long time. So with that said, there are 100% people in jail right now on January 6th that physically fought cops and tried to harm cops. Okay. Those people are a different set. But my point about the informants is that definitely the government knew, and members of the government, and the government's kind of this very large nebulous term, we'll call it Nancy Pelosi, I believe used the anger that existed during January 6th to inflame tensions so they could use it to try and stop Trump from ever being able to seek another election. That's what I think the truth of the matter is. And why do I say that? Kash Patel, who's been nominated to be the FBI director, at the time, I believe that he was a deputy to either I want to say it was the FBI or the Pentagon. He was a deputy high-ranking official. He might have been deputy secretary of defense or something like that. But he was in the room when they specifically said the Trump administration wants to offer, again, because this is like a congressional thing, right? The swearing in ceremony and the counting of electoral college votes, that's all part of Congress. So they can't force it if they have to just ask, do you want this? He was in the room when Nancy Pelosi's staff declined the increased level of National Guard troops. Same with the conversation with Muriel Bowser, the mayor of DC. They declined it. And if people remember, you can find the articles. There was this subterfuge being pushed out there that Donald Trump was going to literally stage a military coup. And therefore, Nancy Pelosi and Muriel Bowser and the Democrats did not want to have, quote unquote, troops loyal to Trump in larger numbers than needed to be in DC. And I made videos about it. I made comments about it. That's the truth. They knew that I don't believe that they actually thought that there was going to be a military coup, but that's the cover that they use to deny or say we don't need these extra military National Guardsmen until the very last minute. Then they start freaking out because I think they knew that they kind of laying it all out there, almost like lighting the powder keg and watching to see what happened. So that's why Donald Trump 100% should pardon. Like the vast majority of these people should be pardoned 100% unequivocally. There's a bunch of people even from Minnesota who are still locked up. Some people haven't even been charged yet. They've been held against their will for like 3.5 years. And that to me is criminal. Even if you are a garbage human dirtbag that did terrible, awful things, to police officers, I still think that you still need to be charged, given your day in court, and be able to go through that process. But they've done some very, very terrible things. And I will just set the record straight. Sometimes the narrative is pushed that cops died on J6. That is 100% false. Not a single police officer died. Were some injured? Yes. But you want to know what's even crazier? More people, more cops were injured on the, the May 29th insurrection. And for those of people that don't remember after George Floyd in DC, a bunch of people started to riot in DC, and President Trump was quote unquote whisked away to a bunker. And then the media made fun of him, called him bunker boy, which is garbage nonsense. But then they actually breached the White House security perimeter. Yeah, over 1,000 officers that day were actually hurt, but you never hear about it. More officers were hurt then than on January 6th. So that's kind of the way that I look at it. In I think the difference between you and I, we're on the same page.
Yep.
But the difference is that you feel it was more directly orchestrated. I think that it was looser orchestrated, but we're going to find out, because like I said, when it came to the drones, as soon as Kash Patel gets in, he is going to declassify all this stuff. I know that the Department of Justice and under Pam Bondi, they have said that they are going to go and find the people that, because these are acts of potential treason. I'm not going to say it's treason, but definitely sedition. And I don't think you can just let bygones be bygones. If there were people organizing in the federal government against the duly elected president on January 6th, because President Trump was still the president of the United States, they need to be investigated. They need to be charged. They need to go through a trial. And if they are convicted, they need to be thrown in jail. And that's the only way, to me, to actually reinstitute faith in our institutions. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. Now, you have any final thoughts here on January 6th, or do you feel like you've already known this, but now you just have more proof to point at?
Yes. Agreed. Hey, I want to give a shout out. We've got some people in our chat.
Yeah. Read some
chat box. By the way, anybody that's listening, go to Facebook and you can click into the chat, make comments, and they'll show up here on our screen. So Cindy Jones says, "Where the heck have you been, Bella?" Cindy, do I know you directly? And when were you last listening? And thanks for tuning in. Sandy Fish, January 20th, cannot come fast enough. I agree, but I also can say this. Thank God he's acting as chief and commander already. Kim Fox, good one. RK, that's AK that was back on back at 720. You said something great that Kim liked. And then Cindy Jones's 1972 to 10 group. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. So that's super inside baseball. This is party stuff. But basically, the Republican Party of Minnesota paid a company called 1972-10 like over $30,000 in the course of consulting work. And that company, the question was brought up by the state central delegates. The question was, who is this company? Who's the president of this company? And there was actually an amendment on the floor that passed to compel the current chairman to disclose who actually was the person that set up this company. And so Chairman Han got up there and he said, based off of my conversations with this person, this is all above board. We consulted legal, but this person wants to remain anonymous because some people operate multiple businesses and they don't want to be attacked or lose business because they're helping out Republicans. This has happened plenty of times in the past. So that's why this company got set up. And
okay, because then she said Han needed to go. And Cindy just answered the question. She said, no, I don't know you personally. Watched you with Walter a while back. Missed ya.
Well, glad to have you back, Cindy.
Yes.
Glad to have you back.
I'm glad to be back on air. I'm excited and looking forward to, we have big aspirations for this show. So thank you.
Yeah.
AK.
And
that's why you paid the big bucks, Chief.
And I also just want to clarify something too. Because of the technology, we're still trying to get stuff figured out. You're seeing these ads pop up. I think I need to install a better ad blocker at the bottom of the screen for the Daily Signal, because I was looking for hats. This hat that I'm wearing actually is buy branded bills, even though they're not paying me. But yeah, they had the biggest American flag because I am a hardcore Djangoist. And for those of you that don't know what a Djangoist is, I am very pro-America to the point. I'm so pro-America, and I've been this way since I was like a kid. I can't root for people from other countries in anything ever. Like if you are from like Canada, or you're a boxer from Mexico, or MMA fighter from Ireland, I can't ever root for you if you're fighting an American. And I'm such a Djangoist that like I don't care. Like if America is not in a gold medal competition, or they're knocked out of the Olympics, I literally won't watch. I do not care. If two countries are fighting each other for something, I don't care, because I'm so America hardcore like Djangoist. But that's just a little side caveat. I did want to do one little last thing because we're running up like 8:11, and we try and do the show for like an hour. But I wanted to get your opinion on this story that broke. Now, Minnesota under Governor Tim Walz has been home to a lot of fraud. And the most recent story of fraud just came out that apparently there's a bunch of, or in this one specific case, but allegedly there's a bunch of fake autism centers that are being set up that are taking federal Medicaid dollars, which are administered through the state. So it's like the federal government has a Medicaid pool. They give it to the states to administer as long as they meet certain guidelines. And then they usually will kick in some of their own state money. And what they found is that, surprise, surprise, this one specific provider was providing autism like care, and they didn't actually have autistic students and children in their program, to the tune of like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some are saying that it's probably closer to like maybe millions of dollars. But my question for you is
this the equivalent of does Tim Walz have a Hunter Biden in his closet, and this is just side money that's being shoveled into his pockets under the scam of? I mean, that's why I said earlier. I mean, we have a lot of work to do here in Minnesota to get some leadership and to actually get some sense and sensibility to get. You mentioned this, and when I saw it in the title of the show, I was like, I don't know anything about this, but it's not shocking to me. Remember the daycare fraud? Yeah. I mean, it's it just goes on and on and on. I mean, the massive surplus that the state had that could have been turned back into the hands of Minnesotans, but it was squandered. I mean, there is so much corruption in the state of Minnesota, and it all smells of the milk breath, sticky fingered tampon Timmy.
Yeah, and the thing that's like, this is the thing that bugs me so much. It's like a couple of different angles from this. From the first angle, like whenever there's fraud from government programs, that's our taxpayer dollars. People like you and I, Bella, probably like the majority of our listeners, people that actually pay into the tax system. Like every year I owe the government money. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's just every year I keep owing them more and more and more and more and more money. And so that's my taxpayer dollars. The second thing, okay, I'm a person that does believe in having a safety net. Okay. I'm not a person I'm not a hardcore libertarian that says, people can just figure it out on their own. I do think that for those that are most vulnerable in our society, we should have programs that help them. My biggest problem, though, is that I also believe that if we do that, we also have to be good stewards of those programs. So you have to have a lot of oversight. So when I see a story like this, where this autism center is allegedly, right, billing for services that were never given, that's taking money away from people that actually need the services, that actually, without the services, their children suffer, right? And so that's my second beef, is that when the government allows this garbage to happen, which I do agree with you, Bella, this is a kickback scheme in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if it's directly like to a specific
it all leads back to tampon Timmy. Here's what we're gonna pledge to our listening audience, since we are based here in Minnesota. I used to call it Minnesota, and I don't want to do that. I was going to tell an oil field story about having to do with my accent, but Richard Dahl warned me that I really don't want to piss off my audience, and I don't. What I want to do is, though, I also want to be the voice of reason that uncovers what is really going on when we get to the local segment, to get Minnesota inspired, to get off our rear ends, and to vote these people out of office. Because Minnesota once was a beautiful state with the 10,000 lakes, and just, you know, and I don't even know how long ago it was that the state was what it originally once. I'm stuttering. We have to restore leadership to Minnesota. There was a gift in Walz being picked as VP, as uncovered story about not only is he a dishonest, he is a disreputable, he is not a leader, he's a fraud, and he has caused, we can't turn around the damage that was done, but we can vote him out of office, and we can start to get some real leadership in this state.
Yeah, absolutely. And so on that note, Bella, I'm going to get ready to land the plane, close this out. Make sure for folks that are watching, whether you watch this live or you're watching it back later, that you make sure to like, share, and comment. During the live stream, we're going to read your comments. Sometimes we're going to be able to get to all of them. Sometimes we'll get to some of them. But if you like this show, if you like the idea of what this represents, where again, Bella is a gal from the oil field. She's working class. I'm working class, but I'm more along the lines of the party structure because I'm an party official, national party official. And Bella is a person that's passionate about her country, passionate about her state. And she knows that Republicans under Donald Trump and folks that have that type of belief system are the people that should be in charge. And so if you like this kind of dynamic back and forth between Bella and I, support the show by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/red, right, and real. And you can become a Patreon subscriber. So eventually we want to do in person, so we're not on Zoom, so we can kind of have more of that realness. I don't like doing Zoom calls, but studio time is expensive, crazily expensive. So if you want to support our mission in getting us in person and you like what it is that we are doing, make sure to go and subscribe there. Make sure to follow all of our socials on X. I'm real AK Kamara. Same with Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to follow our show page on Facebook, Red, Right, and Real with Bella Dangelo and AK Kamara. And then also this podcast is everywhere podcasts are available. So Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google, Apple Podcasts. Go and listen there and continue to support us by liking and sharing at the least. I'm AK Kamara. We were practicing this. I'm AK Kamara.
I'm Bella Dangelo.
And then you go into your clothes.
You know what? This is just a real thrill. It's great to see old fans and new ones coming on board. And like I said, I've got a new mission, and that's to wake up Minnesota. It was, it's very satisfying and gratifying when you see your hard work come to fruition. And this literally started out as a simple idea. I was just tired of people saying their vote didn't count and that the government had no role in their life. And I have stories from roughnecks to lifelong Democrats to 16-year-old kids young adults that have joined the rank in what I always say, we got to fight, baby, fight. And we have got a whole new world that is coming to us, to America, with this new leadership. And we are going to right the wrongs, and we are going to reshape America for what America stands for, with leadership, truth, God, the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And with that, I'm going to say good night. God bless America, and ciao for now.
Are you fired up? Then take action. Copy the link to this episode and text it to one friend who needs to hear it. Support us where you found us by liking and subscribing for future content. This is a grassroots production supported by listeners like